Hey students, today we're going to do a vocabulary glossary. So we're about to read Sun, the last book in the Giver Quartet. And before we do, we want to make sure that we're going to understand the difficult vocabulary in the first few chapters. So we'll be chunking chapters and reading in sections. We're going to start by reading the first 3 chapters of Sun. And so I've pulled the vocabulary words from those 3 chapters for us to take a look at today. So you are going to have a graphic organizer open, and the graphic organizer I have here to the right, that graphic organizer lists all of our words for chapters 1 through 3 that we're focusing on. So we have allotted, camaraderie, grotesque, interim, intermittently, keen, meticulously, primly, requisitioned, solicitous, suffused, surreptitiously, and tentatively. So let's take a look at what is a glossary. This document is going to be where you collect all of the definitions for your words and all of the parts of speech for your vocabulary words. So this is something that you're going to turn in for points, but also it's going to be helpful because it's going to be a tool that you can go back to and visit at any time as kind of like a study guide of vocabulary. So building a glossary, we're doing vocabulary development for, again, book 1, chapters 1 through 3. A glossary is also known as a vocabulary or a clavis. It is an alphabetical list of terms with the definitions for those terms. Traditionally, a glossary appears at the end of a book and includes terms within that book that are either newly introduced, uncommon, or specialized. While reading Sun, you will be building a glossary that you would put at the end of the book with words that you find to be most challenging. For the first chunks of chapters and to get into a routine, the words will be provided to you. Eventually, you will be selecting and defining your own words for your glossary for a chunk of chapters a week. So just taking a look at this graphic organizer right here. So as we go over our words and our parts of speech, you're filling this in today. So make sure that in the part of speech box, you're putting if it's a noun, an adjective, a verb, etc. And then here you're going to be recording the definitions. All right, so I'm going to close this out, but you should have this open, your graphic organizer, and you should be following along with that. All right, so our first vocabulary word is allot. If you allot something, it's a verb, an action word. If you allot something, that means that you're saving a portion of it or you're giving a portion of it to someone for a specific or particular purpose. So for example, if you have a cake and you're gonna have 8 people at your party, you're not just gonna willy-nilly like cut it up and just hand people chunks of it. You're going to allot or save portions that are equal for each person for the cake. So that's an example of something you would allot pieces for or save pieces. Another example is like with money. So if you get a paycheck and you take that entire thing and you just go and spend it, then you're not going to have money for other things. So oftentimes when people get a big paycheck, they allot money for certain things, or they save it and divide it into sections to save it for particular purposes. So for example, I could say, I'm going to allot $30 this month for a book, for my book fund. Allot, saving a portion for a specific purpose. Okay, next up we have camaraderie. Camaraderie, this is a noun, you have it. It is mutual trust and friendship among people who spend a lot of time together. So if you're on a sport team and everyone really gets along very well and you trust each other, then you would say you have camaraderie, you have it, it's a noun. You have camaraderie with your teammates. Again, you're filling these out in your graphic organizer. Next up is grotesque. This actually carries over from our Gothic literature unit. We learned this word with our Edgar Allan Poe short story. Grotesque is an adjective. It's a descriptive word. If something is grotesque, it is either very ugly or comically distorted. Usually this is a creature or some type of shocking image that we would describe as grotesque. It is a descriptive adjective. Next up is interim. An interim is a time in between two activities. It is a noun, it's a thing. So, for example, the football playoff, when we get to the Super Bowl, there is an interim. There is a time in between the first half and the second half where we take a break and we are entertained. So that would be an interim. Also, if you go to watch a play or a ballet, or if you go to listen to a symphony, oftentimes there is an interim. So they pause about halfway through the performance, and then everyone gets up and stretches their legs and gets a drink or goes and eats something, and then they come back. We would say that they're in the interim, which is a time in between two activities. Okay, next up we have intermittently. Intermittently, and this is an adverb, which means it describes how a verb happens. So if something is done intermittently, that means that it is off and on. It's stopping or ceasing for a period of time. So for example, the do not walk across the street sign, that would be lit up intermittently. It is on and then it's off and then it's on and then it's off. I'm giving you time to type into your graphic organizer. Keen. Keen is an adjective, a descriptive word. If something is keen, it is highly developed. Usually when we're using keen, we're using it to describe intelligence. So we would say someone has particularly keen intelligence. That means that it's very highly developed. They're super smart. You could also use this to describe your senses. So if you said, wow, that person has a really keen sense of hearing, that means they have really highly developed hearing. They can hear very well. Same thing with like keen eyesight. You have really good vision. It's highly developed. Meticulously. This is an adverb. It describes how a verb happens. So if something is done meticulously, that means that someone is taking his or her time and showing extreme care and attention to detail. So if you are very particular about how things look and you spend a long time working on them before you turn them in, then we would say that you do your work meticulously. Meticulously. Next up, we have primly. Primly, if something is done primly, this is an adverb, so it describes how a verb happens. If something is done primly, it is done in a way that is very formal or very proper. So if you're going to a fancy dinner, then you want to make sure that your manners are prim and proper. So how you hold your teacup would be in a primly manner. Next up is requisition. This is a verb, an action word. If you requisition something, that means you are formally demanding that it be done. It is an action word, requisition. Formally demanding that something be done. So for Writer's Workshop, those of you who have already been in it, and we did our critical citizenship letters, you found something wrong in the community and you proposed solutions, and you were writing to requisition, formally demand that an issue be resolved or be fixed. So that would be another example of how I could use requisition. All right, next up we have solicitous. Solicitous, this is an adjective, a descriptive word. If someone is solicitous, that means that he or she is showing interest or concern for someone or something. Solicitous. Basically, it's kindness. It is showing empathy. So if you're able to listen to someone's struggles and their issues and their troubles, and you empathize with them, and you really are concerned and you really feel bad and you want to help, then you would say that you are solicitous. Okay, next up is suffuse. This is a verb, an action word. If you suffuse something, you are gradually spreading it through or over. So for my example picture here, forest fires, the fire suffuses through the forest or over the forest floor. It's gradually spreading through. Oftentimes this is used to describe smells. So if you light a candle, maybe it takes an hour to suffuse through the room, gradually spreads through or over, throughout. We have two more and you're done. Surreptitiously. This is an adverb. It shows how a verb is done, how an action is done. So if you do an action surreptitiously, you're doing it in a way that is secretive or sly or sneaky. So if mom or grandma just baked some cookies and you're not supposed to eat them all, but you sneak in anyway and you're trying to eat one, just like this picture, you would be surreptitiously grabbing a cookie, secretively. And here's our last word, tentatively. This is an adverb. If something is done tentatively, it is an adverb. It describes how a verb happens, how an action happens. If something is done tentatively, it's done in a way that is unsure or hesitant or uncertain. So I love this picture of a bird tentatively testing the water. The bird is unsure. Is it going to be cold? Is it like dangerous? I don't know what's going on. Feeling it out. All right, so at this point, you should have your graphic organizer filled in, your glossary collecting all of your parts of speech and definitions for your vocabulary words. Again, I'm providing them right now, but in the future, you're going to be building a glossary of your own, skimming through the chapter chunk and finding words that you yourself find to be difficult and defining them. So everyone's vocabulary is different. Some of you may know one word and not another, and so I don't want to pick all of your vocabulary words. I want you to pick ones that are relevant to you that you can define and learn. So again, this should now be filled in with part of speech and definition. So now there is a Kahoot. So if you are in class, we'll do this together, and if you are not, there is a self-paced Kahoot challenge embedded in your playlist. So use that link and make sure you're putting your first and last name so that I can give you a prize if you win the self-paced Kahoot. All right, have fun with the Kahoot game, and I will see you later.